Now, one thing that I love doing is helping people out, meaning maybe you're looking to purchase a brand new vehicle and you don't want to spend $45,000 or more on a vehicle. An EV is well over 70 grand, and even a used vehicle that's relatively new is over $30,000 to $35,000, and you just don't want to spend that kind of money. Inflation is through the roof, and you're coming across these older Subarus, meaning in this case, this is a 12-year-old Subaru Impreza with 165,000 miles. Now, I've owned this vehicle for almost a decade, and I've placed over 100,000 miles on this vehicle, so I can give you some really good pointers regarding these older Subarus. So I don't really want to talk about the good points. I really want to talk about things you need to look at on these older Subarus, and ultimately, is it worth buying one? Now, if you're not familiar with this channel, ultimately it's how you can maintain and repair your own vehicles and save a ton of money through the process. So after so many miles and almost 10 years of ownership, I've done so many videos on this Subaru and others, including head gasket replacement, timing belt on how to check and replace it, catalytic converter, spark plugs, filters, oil change, transmission fluid, diff fluid, wheel bearings, sway bar links, struts. I've done so many videos on this vehicle. So if you have a Subaru or you're looking to purchase one, I'll include a link in the description box below for a Subaru playlist. Bookmark it, because if something pops up, which is inevitable, you have a playlist and chances are I've done a video on it, okay? Now, that being said, the way I sort of want to categorize this, the most expensive repairs you can expect on this vehicle. So again, 2010 Subaru with the 2.5 liter boxer engine, 4-cylinder boxer engine, which is used in pretty much every vehicle that they make up until today, 2022. The architecture is still the same. So once again, if I can help someone out, I'm very happy to do it. So what do you need to look at on these vehicles? Number one, hands down, head gaskets. And I'll give you a story very quickly. A friend of mine had a 2013 Subaru. Very recently, this happened. And she brought the vehicle to the dealership, and the dealer said, just for a checkup, and the dealership said, you really need head gaskets. And this is something that's well known on these older Subarus, meaning before 2014 or up to 2014, something you really have to keep an eye on. So the dealership said you need head gaskets. You're talking $2,800 to repair them, which is right. Typically $2,500, $3 grand, because you have to pull the engine out of the vehicle to fix the head gaskets. So my friend said, you know what? I'm not paying that kind of money. And she started shopping through Carvana, Vroom, all of these CarMax, all of these online dealerships that essentially will buy your vehicle. She had a very attractive offer, and she sold the car. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this is because if you're buying a car from one of these dealerships and you don't have documentation of the head gaskets being replaced, you either have to walk away or negotiate that in the price. You have to. So make sure you have documentation of the head gaskets. Now, run a Carfax if it's a private party. If it's a dealership selling the vehicle, ask them to provide you with a Carfax. Make sure it's Carfax. I found that they're the best out of all the other competitors. And if you see proof, fantastic. If you don't see proof, use that as a bargaining chip and then pay to get it done. Now, how can you check it? I'll give you a video grab. It's so easy. Grab yourself a pen light, and where the cylinder head meets the block, you will find an oil leak. And that is just it's the best sign. Now, you could say maybe a valve cover leak, which is possible, but if you look hard enough, you will be able to tell where that cylinder head meets the block. And you have to check on both sides, because you have a cylinder head on the driver's side and a cylinder head on the passenger side. But if you see a leak there, it needs to be replaced. So you have to factor that in. Now, can you replace the head gasket at home? Absolutely. Again, I did a video on that. It was a couple of different episodes because it's pretty extensive. But the thing I have to say, it was not hard. It was the first time I ever pulled an engine out of a Subaru. It was so simplistic. The way that the engineers engineered the parts to be taken apart or just to unhook things and put everything back together. So simplistic, and I have to say it was actually very enjoyable doing that whole process. Now the cost for me to do that at home was $800. Admittedly, I did not have an engine hoist. That was like 200 bucks, 150, $200, I forgot. I bought a used one off Facebook. And the biggest expense is the resurfacing of the cylinder heads, which are crazy not to do this. In other words, what some people do to skip this, they just remove the cylinder head and replace the gasket and call it a day. Bring the cylinder heads to a machine shop because you may have a cracked head, you may have a down valve. Pay the 400 bucks. Why do all this work if you may have to do it all over again because you have a problem in the cylinder head? So it cost me 800 bucks. It's been over 20,000 miles since I did that job, and I'll show you right now, there's no leaks whatsoever on this engine. So by all means, it's something you can do if you want to invest the time. But again, if you don't want to do it, structure that into your negotiation. 2, timing belts. Again, pre-2014, these vehicles had timing belts. The newer ones have timing chains. You don't have to worry about this with the timing chains. But on the timing belts, typically they have to be replaced every 105,000 miles. Now, when I removed the original belt, it was still in excellent shape after 106,000 miles. So that number is conservative, but nonetheless, it's something you want to verify was replaced or negotiate that, because if the timing belt snaps, your engine is done. It's an interference engine, which means the piston comes up, the valve is coming down, and now your engine is destroyed. Thirdly, now this you can't really check unless you have a code reader, and meaning maybe someone deleted the code, and you can check with the code reader, which you can purchase for like 20 bucks, code readers, a cheap code reader. And the code is 420. Now this is again on older Subarus. The newer ones, I don't know if this is a problem with them, but code 420 is for a catalytic converter, essentially a failure. Now this vehicle, after all of these years, it's a 12-year-old vehicle, and up until 6 months ago, I've never once had the check engine light on. And I'm not lying. I mentioned this in another video, and I had comments, you're lying, that's impossible, how could that be true? Honest to God, this vehicle had never once had the check engine light on, except until recently. And that was for the catalytic converter. Now, I did a video on how to replace it on a different Subaru. I think that was a Forester or an Outback, one of those, but it's the same engine, meaning same exhaust. Everything is exactly the same because, again, they used this engine for many, many years and continue to use the architecture. So you can do it at home if you wanted to. The part itself is around $450 bucks. You want quality parts. Don't buy something that's cheap off Amazon. You're asking for a problem down the road. Get Walker, get OEM, get something that's quality that will last you a long time. Those are really, I would say, the top 3 things you have to watch on these older vehicles. Other things, front end. Now this you can argue is any vehicle over time, but I find with the Subaru, the front end has always been a little noisy. Things wear out prematurely, in my opinion, meaning sway bar links. Every Subaru, it just seems sway bar links don't last. So sway bar links I've replaced, I think, twice already. I've gone with OEM and I've gone with Moog, and OEM seems to be the best, at least for me so far. Struts, lower control arms I replaced just out of due diligence, meaning this is my wife's vehicle. She uses it to work 5 days out of the week. I want to keep on top of it versus her coming home at night on a Thursday and there's a problem. I don't want to be bothered with that, so I rather keep on top of it. So it's something I replaced just out of due diligence, the lower control arms. Wheel bearings, they lasted up to 140,000 miles. One went bad, the rear, I think, passenger side. So I replaced both of them at the same time. That's a little hard, that job on this vehicle, but not impossible. Now this is a Northeastern vehicle. This sort of clicked in my mind talking about the wheel bearings because of the rust. This is a Northeastern vehicle, meaning it's had 12 seasons of just snow, salt, all the garbage that happens during the wintertime here. And the roads are horrific in the Northeast. They're just garbage. And on top of that, my wife drives this vehicle into the city. And so it's it gets pummeled, this vehicle, and it's not garaged. And one of my favorite channels, YouTube channels, it's really the only one I watch, is the Car Wizard. And it's just a great channel because the guy's so honest and he just knows so much about vehicles and he can help. And I appreciate that. So he did a video just yesterday on his Chevy pickup truck. It's like a 99, I think, Silverado SS. Beautiful truck, body's in great shape, running gear, engine, transmission, all of that is in great shape. And then he puts it on the lift, and it's just rust galore on the frame. It really needs a frame replacement. And it's sad to see, but after all of these years with this vehicle in the Northeast, this frame still looks terrific. I don't know if they dip it in the factory in anti-corrosive properties or if they spray it on, but whatever they do in Japan, they do it the right way, because it does have some surface rust. And in terms of the paint, it's not bubbling yet, except for a little bit on the door here. But it's held up really well in the Northeast, and that's something to say. And I think that's also important, because why else would you buy this vehicle? Because you want the all-wheel drive system. There's no other reason why you want a Subaru. So Northeast, Midwest, anywhere you have really nasty weather, this thing is awesome. So long story short, those are the biggest expenses that you need to look at. In terms of running cost, what I'll do is, because I'm a nerd and I keep track of this stuff, I'll calculate how much this has cost me to run, a running cost, over the last, it's almost 10 years. In February, it's going to be 10 years. We're now in October. And I'll tell you what it is on a monthly basis. And it's going to be very low. I know it will. It's going to probably under $100 a month. It has to be. The only thing I have to pay for that's expensive every 3 years typically, tires and an alignment. You just have to. It's inevitable. And that's typically $700-800. At least it was recently. It was like $800 for good tires. I don't go cheap on tires. Good tires and an alignment. I can't get around that. And once a year, it's $40 for an inspection. Other than that, admittedly, I do my own work, but I've never been to a mechanic once. You can do the work. It's so simplistic to work on these cars. It's really not that bad. And again, I sincerely hope this helps a number of you out there, maybe looking at these older cars. Inflation's through the roof. What they want for cars is just stupid money. You're going to lose money on it anyway in the long run. Why not? If you want point A to point B, this is a great choice. All-wheel drive, it's reliable, 87 octane is all that you need. It's cheap to insure. It's everything that you need it to be. It has airbags, it's safe, it's got the steel cage. World Rally Champions, it's a great car. So that's all I really have to say. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.